Welcome to the Garden Talk podcast, where we interview growers from all over the world, both beginners and experts, seeking to learn more about what they know about gardening and how they do things in their garden. Hey, what's up, everybody? For those of you that don't know me, my name is Chris, aka Mr. Grow It, and you're tuned into the Garden Talk podcast. This is episode number 137. In this episode, I interview Sebastian Good from Fast Buds. He is an expert when it comes to autoflowers and has done many techniques over the years to help increase both quality and yield. And that's what we're going to get into in today's episode. We get into topics such as plant nutrition, growing medium, container size, light cycle, environment conditions, and so much more. These podcast episodes are broken up into short clips and put on a dedicated YouTube channel called Garden Talk Clips. I also have a gardening channel where I show the plants that I grow. Both of those channels will be linked down in the YouTube description section below. One of my goals for this podcast is to bring free information about gardening to the general public. That being said, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's episode who helped make that goal possible. Thanks to AC Infinity for sponsoring this episode. Check out their Controller 69, which can help automate your environment's conditions. It'll automatically turn on and off equipment to help control the temperature, humidity, VPD, light schedule, and even the oscillating fans. Click the link in the description section below so you can learn more about the Controller 69, and the discount code MrGrowIt15 works on both Amazon and their website, acinfinity.com. Stash Blend. Stash Blend consists of several ingredients in one, so you no longer have to buy individual bottles. It includes corn steep liquor, seaweed extract, humic acid, beneficial bacteria, silica, and mycorrhizal fungi. It can be used in addition to your synthetic base nutrients or be used in living soil systems. Simply mix it into water and water your plants with it. You can get it at stashblend.com, link in the description section below, and use the discount code THESTASH. And we're back, and I'm joined with Sebastian Good. How you doing today?
Hey Chris, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just coming back from Germany, and it's like the Wild West over there now with a new legalization. And yeah, it's fantastic because I'm German, going back to my motherland, and finally having consumed the first ever legally. This is just it's healing, to be honest.
That's awesome, man. I'm so happy for everybody over in Germany that finally got legalization. A long time coming, but it's finally here. So that's really, really cool. So getting into the topic today, what we're going to talk about is maximizing yield with autoflowers. So you are an expert when it comes to autos, and you do techniques that are proven to work. So want to hear all about it in this episode. But first, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into gardening?
Well, I'm Sebastian. I call myself Sebastian Good. Don't ask me why. I just needed another, I didn't want to go with my real last name, still living in a somewhat prohibition country in Spain right now. Even though we might change, we might move away. We've been on the road for a little while. I've been in contact with the plant for 25 years. It's like I consumed it when I was young, teenager, and I realized this is something for me. I'm into it. I've been gardening this plant for seriously for a good 10 years, something like that. In between, of course, I threw us a few seeds guerrilla style in the woods or something like that, but I don't really want to count that because that's not when I really started fully emerging, trying to really get better and better, let's say doing it indoors kind of. And a few years back, maybe about 4.5 years back, something like that, I wanted to change in my life. I wanted to, and I pitched a podcast to Fast Buds, and talking about, because I love their products, I love their strains, and I pitched it to them, and they said, yes, we don't want it audio, we want it video. So I added the video to it, and the rest is history, let's put it that way.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's how I know you from Fast Buds. I met you over at the booth at MJ BizCon, and man, it was such a good time there.
It was amazing. I mean, and meeting each other, because we all do similar things, we are full on 100% in for this plant. I think we probably all got some bad talks from our wives sometimes before, because they were like, "Here, this is too much, dude. You know, like, now you have a family. This is just too much. You know, you have to, like, calm down, stress yourself. Even if you're in with so much passion, and if you meet like you or Rob or Pigeon or Dakota from Homegrow TV, Q, Hi Again, and of course Joe, and all coming together. It's just like it's like a field trip kind of, but with people you kind of know, but you don't really know in person. So it's just like fantastic. It's just like good times.
It was a memorable week for sure, and I'm looking forward to MJ BezCon this year in 2024. So it's exciting. So let's get into autoflowers. I want to start with the basics. Can you start by explaining the basics of autoflowers and why they're so popular amongst growers that are looking to maximize yields?
Well, I mean, autoflowers are ruderales. That's the gene, right? So they have some indica, they have some sativa, rarely only one or the other, and they have some ruderales. And the special thing about ruderales is that it is not photodependent. Like, it doesn't need light to flower, it needs darkness to flower. So if we have photoperiodic strands, they need a certain darkness period, and that is like their bump to go into flower. That's why we shift our light cycle to 12-12. Ruderales doesn't need that, right? Because it basically is an SKP into, it became feral. It's most likely is a descendant of sativa, and it grew in these very northern regions, like in Russia and in Eastern Europe. And it had very, very, very short summers, so to survive, it basically, through mutation, it developed this ability to flower with not caring, because summers have very, very, very long sunlights, but they're very, very, very short. So, and many people experimented with this ditch, this ditch plant, some people call it, and a lot of people gave up on it because they didn't really see it going. Like for example, Neville Schoenmaker. I don't know if that rings a bell. He is like a breeder of the very, very first. Like, he collected genetics from all over the world, and in Amsterdam bred like stuff like the original Hayes and stuff like that. So really iconic things, basically building stones. He already experimented with this ruderales in the 70s, but he didn't see it going anywhere, because it is a recessive trait, and it makes everything in the beginning smaller. That's why when we go then a few steps further, like, in the 2000s, more or less, when Sasha from Doctor's Choice, also called the Joint Doctor, he came out with Lowrider, which was the first commercially available autoflower in the world. And when he came out with it, he basically bred for this. He was a student at that time, and he wanted to have a strain which stays small and is quick and is stealth, but it only got like big, like only like a foot tall, something like that. But it also was done after like 8-9 weeks, full circle, not just flower. And I think a lot of people in that point were just thinking it's like a novelty kind of thing and didn't think it through, because the positive thing, why breeding with it took off so fast in only 20 years, is because the life cycle is so short, right? If I have other varieties, I need so much more time. I can maybe have two different generations per year, and that's a max. I mean, who am I talking to? You know how long it takes to develop a strain. You did it yourself. Just imagine now you have an 8-week life cycle. Like, you can speed this whole process up so much, and that's why we got so fast so far with autos. Because everybody is just looking for that one single trait. And if you have a big enough populations, if you go on bigger pheno hunts, and you really pick the ones. Oh, I want the big ones, and I want the ones which are yummy, but they all still need to have that autoflowering trait, and you really do selective breeding. That's how we are at this amazing positions that we have regular varieties which can compete against photoperiodic strains, but much faster, and with this special trait of not needing to change the photoperiod.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know about a lot of that history that you just mentioned. That's really, really cool to hear. And yeah, as far as them being real short flowering period, I mean, you can add in a whole another cycle for that year if you're going just autos, right? It's so fast. I mean, some of the autos I've grown are like 75 days from sprout to harvest, and there are some that are even quicker than that, right? I mean, you're looking at what, 55, 60 days from sprout to harvest? Like, that's super fast.
Exactly. I just needed to prove it. I will come out with a video very, very soon on the FastBuds YouTube, which will be how to grow autos fast. And that does not include, it's the exact opposite of what we're talking about, maximize yield, right? I did something completely different. I wanted to prove that I can grow an autoflower from seed to harvest in under 8 weeks. And in 55 days, I grew our lemon cherry cookies in my caravan right now. That's why it looks so funny here behind me and stuff. I'm sitting actually in a caravan. I've been touring all through Europe, 8,000 kilometers. What's that? Like 6,000 miles, something like that, 5,000 miles. And I grew a plant in like a little grow box touring through Europe. And within 55 days, I grew her from seed to harvest. As I said, of course, you can't expect then to have the highest yield if you want to be the fastest. You can't have everything, but I did it, and I am happy because I can now talk with people about even more. I learned even more about it. I mean, every time when we grow, we learn more every day. Otherwise, we're doing something wrong. But yeah, I did it. I'm a little bit proud of myself for doing that, because I only had one single plant, and I could have messed that up, and I made updates about that plant on social media every week. There wasn't not like the possibility to have something in the background to just come on, let's switch that one, or this one doesn't look so good, so I'm happy about it.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing that. So I know a lot of people who are wondering, growing medium certainly has a big impact on yield. Container size, that's another thing that kind of goes hand in hand, and yield can certainly be impacted by that choice. What are your recommendations for what growing medium and what container size and type to use when growing autos?
I mean, let's put myself aside. We're talking about maximizing yield, and if you want to have always maximizing yield and you want to bank on that, I mean, that doesn't matter what you grow. You gotta most likely go DWC, because you will have bigger yields, and it doesn't matter if you have photos or autos. It just doesn't matter at all. I personally don't. I'm like the nature kind of guy, but let's come from the perspective soil, right? Like, I would always, and that's one very, very important thing. Autos need a very, very airy soil, right? They need to have, even if you have a light mix or something, throw some extra perlite in it. Me personally, pumice, or whatever you can get your fingers on. They need that extra air on their roots just to be able to spread and fill out the entire planter. And then we come to the container size, is the other thing. Of course, container size matters, and nowhere else does it matter as much as autoflowers, because if you want to have huge autos, you will need to give her oversized pots, right? I mean, you can grow in smaller pots too, but it will go down, and as long as it goes down, it will just, it basically figures out, oh, this is how much space I have, this is how big I can get, because that's one of the main factors which will determine on how big it gets. Because if you just put it in a tiny container, that's by the way one of the tricks how I grew it so fast. I put it in not in a tiny container. It doesn't matter how wide it is. It could be super wide. If it is only very short, it's shallow, right? That is the key. It needs to be a deep, not a shallow, the exact opposite, a deep container, so that the taproot can go really far down. And then you have airy soil or airy medium and a deep container. And that are the two huge factors which will help you grow and maximize your yield in autoflower.
Bigger the roots, bigger the fruits is what a lot of people say. And that
Me
definitely
too.
holds true. I know a lot of folks that grow autos and they say 5-gallon container or larger, or some people say 7-gallon container or larger. So they're going after these larger containers, and they're often just planting the seed directly in there and not doing any transplanting, which we're going to talk about transplanting here in a little bit. But first, I want to ask about nutrient lineups. So when growing autos in particular, what specific nutrient lineups or additives are most effective?
To me, look, I'm a living soil grower. For me, I'm trying to feed my soil, and if my soil is healthy and happy, then I don't have to pour so much on the top, right? I'll rather have everything in my soil already, and then my microbes and my fungi and my bacteria, they will help to feed my plant, and my plant will just take whatever it needs, right? There are people, and now we're coming back a little bit to this container size. There are people I know. I want to use them as an example because these are the people who I know who grow some of the biggest autoflowers I've ever seen anywhere, and that is Kana Matos. I don't know if you have heard of him. He's in Canada, and auto grows Wales, obviously somewhere in Wales, and they have this system. And it is, I think they use monkey nutrients. It's a mineral-based line. But what they do is they have these giant pots. I don't even know how big they are, like 15-gallon or something, like really big, relatively deep. They stand on these self-watering bases, and they're not auto pots, but the other one, mega pots, I think they call themselves. And then they add an additional air base because, as I said, autoflowers love this airy soil, right? So if you add an extra boost of oxygen in, it will help the plant to uptake not only the water, but also the nutrients. And these guys have grown with this setup, megapots with monkey nutrients, multiple times reproducible autoflowers, which yield more than a pound, one plant.
That's a pretty good yield there. Yeah, I've actually never heard of monkey nutrients. I'll have to look into them. I'm not sure if they're...
I think it might be British.
Okay.
think it might be British. I'm sure. I'm sure you can do that with a lot of nutrient lines. What I would always suggest is don't start overfeeding your autos, right? Less is more, especially in the beginning, because if you overfeed them, you might burn them. When you have a photoperiodic plant, no problem, just give her 2 weeks extra. The auto will say, no, stress, flower. And then you have a foot tall plant, and you're not gonna maximize your yield. So in that sense, less is more. Don't overdo it. And for me, and I think we talked about this before, and when you were on Fastbirds Talks, for me, adding microbes, adding fungi, adding all this to my soil, even if you are feeding mineral-based nutrients, it certainly won't hurt your plant. It will certainly just help your plants uptake more food, and more food, more bud.
Good to know. Yeah, I've mostly used when growing autos. I'm trying to think. Say, I've only grown about 24 autoflower plants total. I'm a photo guy, but for my little bit of experience growing autos, I've grown with Fox Farm Trio. Had some really good results with them. Blue Planet Nutrients. I've grown them organically, so I've grown them a wide different ways.
Advanced nutrients, great. People with Athena have great results. Like, I mean, we could keep on going. If you want to have like the more bio kind of line, I know people who grow Firebud with BioBiz, and for me personally, I'm not there. I don't have my nutrient line. And I think we talked about this before. It's like, you experiment with things back and forth, and yeah, I mean, I'm not set. I don't really want to mess with mineral-based nutrients so much. It's not like me, because I think we didn't talk about this in the beginning. Like, I grew up planting. Like, my family has gardens. My great grandfather was a gardener. Like, he was growing flowers. You know, he had a flower shop and so on. So it's kind of with me in my blood, I want to say, and for that, I think I understood very early on that, like, if I have good soil, and if I make sure that my soil is alive and has everything everybody needs, then I don't have to worry so much about like force feeding anybody.
Yeah, with the organics, a lot of people swear by the flavor as well, which is a different conversation here. We won't get into that, but you can certainly get some really good results on the organic side of things. I want to get into light schedules. So you already talked about how the autoflowers can stay on the same light schedule. What is the ideal light schedule, though? A lot of people doing 18 hours with lights on, 6 hours off. Some people 20 hours with lights on, 4 hours off. Some people doing continuous, 24 hours with the lights on, 0 off. Is that better? What light schedule do you personally recommend? And also, if you can get into types of light, right? Are you talking about like a full spectrum LED light? Is that going to be better than your traditional HPS, like the MH HPS combo, or what?
Yeah, that's now a philosophy with autoflowers and lights like those, right? So when I like back in the day, I was just, because they really don't give a damn that much, really. Like, I mean, I used to have fantastic results with having a 7-1 schedule. Isn't that funny? Because they were recommending my light to be turned off never on longer than 8 hours. So I only let it run 7 hours, had it an hour off, 7 hours, had it an hour off, 7 hours. I'm away from that. But yeah, it's hard to say. It's really, really hard to say. Autos love light, but everybody needs some sleep sometimes. So no matter what schedule you go, I would give them, just out of kindness, give them some rest sometimes, right? So, but then again, I'm talking about Kenamatos. He runs 24/7, I'm pretty sure, and he's growing pound autos there. So, like, not true. I would suggest to run, if you don't care about electricity bill, I would not just run an 18/6 light schedule, I personally. But the amount you get more out of it, or better, the time you will be faster with running like a 24 or even a 22/2 or something like that, or even a 24/0, is not, it is not justified by spending that money. And we all know how expensive, electricity is by now. And if we're already talking about maximizing yield, we probably want to try to keep the ratio of the amount of money we spend to what will we get out in the end at a reasonable level. So my last run for the Autoflower World Cup was, I was running them 24/7 for 6 weeks or something like that. And after 6 weeks, I got them down to like, I think like 19.5, something like that. So you see, I prefer towards the end of flower to amp up the light, to really give them, even maybe hang an extra light in there, what you said, like maybe even hang an HPS on top of it, right? Basically just fry them with light, but to give them some breaks in between. While in the vegetative phase, they really don't give a damn in the end, to be honest with you, unless you start going less than 18/6, don't go like, like 12/12 or 14/10, or we can keep on doing that. I wouldn't go under the 18/6 ever, for no reason, other than if you believe in this theory, you want to shut the lights off the last 2 days before, you harvest them. But I've never really seen any much of a difference in that.
I actually was forced to put autos on a 12/12 before, just because my whole tent, I had some photos and autos mixed, so I had to do it. And I didn't get as good as a result as I would have if I kept it on an 18/6 light cycle or something longer than that. So I'm 100%. With you right there.
Yeah, 100%. Like, but it doesn't mean you can't grow autos in between. Like, there's, for example, like where you are, for example, right? you have really humidity issues. Like you have very low humidity, right? So it's probably you probably have a humidifier running 24/7 basically in your setup. So it won't hurt if you have the extra space and you're not worried about that you have issues with with air circulation or something. Adding a few extra autos in your tent just for the fun of it and the transpiration, but the more soil you have in there, the more plants you have in there, the more humidity automatically comes in there. So that doesn't hurt, just to amp up the humidity. And then if you have to switch to 12/12, I mean you just won't have that big of a yield, but you know that before you start.
Good point. How about environment conditions? I'm talking temperature, relative humidity. What do you typically aim for when trying to maximize yield?
Cold. Big, when it's hot, autos won't grow as tall. When they see, hey, summer is here, yay, let's go, super intense light, super warm temperatures, let's talk about the humidity in a minute, but just these factors together, they will make autoflowers grow less tall, therefore faster, right? And so I would always try to suggest keep your temperatures so now we're gonna go, I have to do the math because I'm back for too long back in Europe. I don't have the Fahrenheit on my things. I would try to keep my grow, especially in the first 5 weeks, under 25 degrees Celsius. So what's that? 70 something?
77 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. So let's say 70, rather keep them by 75, and I wouldn't go obviously under 68. I mean, really, I wouldn't try keep it in that range in the beginning, especially, and you will just have taller plants. Also, don't necessarily, if you want to maximize your yield, amp your light up in the very beginning, right? If they search a little bit for the light, they stretch more, and if they're a bit more stretched, if they're taller, obviously in the end there will be bigger plants.
What was the range? We have a lot of people that do Celsius. What was the range? You said 25 as the high. What was the low for Celsius?
Yeah, let's say 21, 20. Let's say 20 to 25, especially in the beginning. Once we come more towards flower, I don't mind so much. I mean, you can go higher. You can go up to 27, 28. But eventually, once we go higher than that, we're gonna fry our turps out, right? And we want something delicious. So we need to. The sweet spot is between 20 and 27 degrees, I'd say. And then obviously the humidity depends very much in what part of the grow stadium you are, right? Just like it is with photoperiodic. I don't think that the actual humidity is that different from photoperiodic strains. Just keep them in the first week or so, I keep them at 70%, something like that. So just you have and there you also have to be, but this is the same again with photoperiodic strains. They need enough light. They can't stress them with the light. On top of that, if you make it way too hot, they will just stretch like crazy, and you have these asparaguses standing around.
Got it. So you hear a lot of people say genetics. It's all about genetics. How important is the choice of strain when aiming for high yields with autoflowers? And can you recommend some top performing strains?
I always love to say you can mess up any genetic, but you can grow something fantastic out of trash genetics, right? I mean, if the information isn't there, no matter if it's you or anybody who is the most pro grower, if you have not good genetics, it will just not work as well. And in terms of genetics, high yield, it always helps with autos if they have at least 50% sativa at least, right? Because we know sativas are just not as fast as indicas, and fast is in this sense our enemy because we do not have that control of Yeah, I just let her veg another 2 or 3 weeks and then just scrog her out and stuff like that. It's just like you need to go with the life cycle of the plant. And sativa dominant autoflowers tend to have higher yields than indica dominant autoflowers because they just need more time, and therefore they will have a little bit more of a time period to actually grow bigger, taller, and therefore will yield more.
And I know you work for Fast Buds and you've grown out so much of their stuff. Do you have maybe like a top 2 or 3 strains that you can kind of recommend here?
I mean, everything with the word gorilla will be very satisfying. Like there's a GG4 cut in the Holy Halls somewhere of Fast Buds, which did some miracles, and it worked really well with. It doesn't matter if it's strawberry gorilla cookies, or gorilla Skittles. It just, these genetics, they grow big, they grow tall, they grow fat nuggets. They're terpy, they're strong. Like they're like our flagships, if you want to. So when I went to visit the breeding facilities, there were literally rooms with 200, 300 plants just for breeding. So like, because we know that is what a lot of customers ask for, especially if you go in a commercial production, then, which really is the thing by now. Like there is really commercial autoflower production, and they need to go for yield, of course, and then like stuff like our purple lemonade. As I said, like if you start looking a little bit more into the genetics, the orange sherbet, wedding cheesecake, all these varieties will be having at least 50% sativa heritage, and that will just help to, just make the plant that much bigger, and that just helps, because if the plant's ready in 8 weeks, there's big plants in 8 weeks, but it's just a little less time.
Understood. I want to circle back to transplanting. Now, this is something that when it comes to transplanting autos, the community is kind of divided on this. You have some people that say never transplant auto, always plant your autos directly into the final container. Don't transplant at all. You have other people that say, yo, transplant's completely fine. It's not going to slow down the plant at all. And some people say it actually increases yield. And I'll hold off on my thoughts until after you answer, but give us your thoughts on transplanting autos, when to do it, so on and so forth.
I mean, when we transplant, our medicinal plants, we like so much in general. We usually wait for the root ball to really we love this like root porn, I guess we call it, just take the container off and you look and it's just white, everything. You do that with autos, you might have her already flowering. So that's like a little bit like, I would not wait that long, and like that would not do that. I personally also would always definitely try to hit her with some, mycorrhizae. So she just like minimum intervention, I'd say. I mean, I very successfully transplanted autoflowers many times. It's just like, don't wait too long, right? But generally speaking, the people who grew the biggest autos I have seen so far follow me with this. They just throw it in the final container and that's it. So of course there will be people out there and saying, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. People do it. I know people do it very, very successfully, but if you're just starting this out and stuff, and you don't have these like issues that you need to transplant, that you like that you don't have the final, that you don't have a space issue, then don't do it. I just talked to somebody in North Macedonia who's growing some of our gorilla cookies, like I think 3,600 or something like that at a time. And he was asking me, half of my plants started flowering. Yeah, because you left them like for, I don't know, like 5 weeks in like 3-liter, like less than a gallon containers, which aren't super, super deep. And then just, they just hit the ground. They just like the conditions. They were like, yeah, I'm done here, basically. Let's wrap this up. Like 4 more weeks and I'm done.
That is a common thought that people say, and I don't know if it's true or not, but is it true that if it's in a small container and the roots hit the bottom of the pot and start circling, that's going to induce flowering faster than if the plant were in a larger container and the roots were kind of spreading out more? Is there truth to that at all or no?
If you ask me, yes, there's a truth to it, because you will grow the biggest autos like by sheer size, not necessarily yield, if you do them outdoors and if you do it in the right climate outdoors, and the plant can stretch and can go wherever it wants to, So, but of course, if you have a giant container and you overwater, then it like you have this like tiny little ball which is like full of water, and basically it's almost like you have an extra pot inside of that pot, right? Where the plant doesn't want to go out, and then it can happen to you in a big container too. So in general, I believe, as we said in the very beginning, the bigger the roots, the bigger the fruits, and if you give that autoflower enough space, it will thank you with a big yield.
Okay. And then you mentioned mycorrhizal fungi during transplanting,
Mm-hmm.
which is what I was going to talk about. That's a key that a lot of people do is they expose the roots during that transplanting process. And that gives them the opportunity to sprinkle that mycorrhizal fungi onto the roots, which is super beneficial in so many different ways, right? Another thing I like to do actually for not just autos, but for photos as well is dump a little bit of worm castings in the bottom of the hole during transplant. So I usually do like quarter cup, dump that down in there. That's going to help with give it a little bit more nutrition and beneficial microbes as well down by the root zone where you've sprinkled the mycorrhizal fungi on there as well. So those are a couple tips for people to do if they do decide to do the transplanting process.
And for me, for example, now with my like tiny grow, because I still with my 55-day plant, I still used living soil, which was really hard in a like 2.5 gallon container kind of thing. So to keep that alive, I made sure to always add very with every watering, right, very trace amounts of either fungi or bacteria, microbes, just to keep that life in that soil, because otherwise, you'll with these tiny containers, it's very hard. And I had still, and I have to this day, I moved the container after I cut her, I moved it outdoors. It's in front of my caravan now with some ornamental plants in it and a tiny little baby. And there's still living worms in there. So it proves me that it did work out.
That's awesome. Let's move on to plant training. So there are several different plant training techniques that you can do on your autos. Some people do low stress training, some do topping, super cropping, the list goes on. What training do you recommend for folks that are looking to increase yields when growing autos?
You can top autos. This is not you can. It's not that you can't top them. You just have to do it right? So you have to. I would like do it at the third or fourth node, like early. Don't go wait too long, because if you wait too long, then you might just stress her back into flower really quick. In the beginning, it won't be that crazy for her, So if you do it early on, it's possible, and then. Yeah, you can. Of course, these guys who yield these crazy amounts of with autos, they train. They like train. They're in there all the time. You have to expose the bud sides to make it possible. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen. Is it? For me personally, I don't do it so much, but I'm also coming often from a different perspective, right? I need to take photos of these plants. I need to move them around. I can't just like tie them somewhere here and somewhere there in my tent. It has to be all movable. And also when you photograph a lot, or video a lot, you want to show the people of how does this plant grow naturally, not how does this plant look after I bend it in all different directions. But all the things which work for photoperiodic strains work for autoflowers fantastic, and I've trained the heck out of them before, and it's great. It just maximizes the yield. It's that simple. It just takes longer, right? I mean, you can see it with any plant. It needs time to bounce back, and the same thing for an autoflower. So every time you will train an auto, it will, depending on how heavy you train it, but it's probably going to set her back like a week or so. So that will make it take longer. So if you do it, you might as well make it worthwhile because you need to have that much more of a yield other than, finishing up quickly.
Got it. Yeah, the best result I've ever gotten growing an auto was just low stress training. And I grew Carmelicious by MSNL. This was, geez, it had to have been 10 years ago now. And,
wow.
I had 10 different seeds, and some of the plants I let grow naturally. I think 2 or 3 I let grow naturally. 2 or 3 I did the low stress training on. I did some topping and compared everything, right? So the topping ones didn't do as good as just the low stress training ones. And they actually didn't do good as the one growing naturally as well. So the naturally grown ones with no training was about 5 to 6 ounces. And then the trained ones with low stress training was 7 to 8 ounces. And then the topping was, I think it was 4 to 5 ounces. So, it was all from seed, right? So there's differences in the phenotype expression. So, I'm not a scientist. This is me just doing an experiment in my home and stuff like that. But this is what I observed.
Oh no, but I mean that's how we can figure out what works best for us. I mean, I would say if you are depending on this plan on these plans, like, so meaning you don't want to just test it out, you probably have good chances if you top the auto right, you do it right, you train her over a long time, you probably have high chances that plan might be the biggest yielder. But we don't really need it anymore so much because we can train without the topping with low stress training. And, it doesn't matter if it's bud clips or if you tie her down, just make sure that that you have an even canopy in the end of the day. Everywhere gets the light. And most likely, if you just perform some decent amounts of low stress training, you will have the highest yield per plant. But now let me challenge that for 1 second. Because what if I, instead of trying to find an autoflower, which is taking 10, 11 weeks, 12 weeks, like a sativa dominant one, what if I take one of my lemon cherry cookies or banana purple punch heavy indicas, right? Which can be ready in only 8 weeks from seed to harvest. Now, if I space that out over the time, right? So I can run her one more time. Within 3 growth cycles, I can have her in 3 growth cycles while I have the others only 2 growth cycles. Bam, I'm back at the yield, So like that is really a philosophy. In that moment, I wouldn't even train her. Just let them go, do their thing, do some light defoliation, minimum intervention, finish them in 8, maximum 9 weeks, be done with them, and can grow new instead of growing 12 weeks or something like that. So, and this is just,
Good point. Yeah, there's so many different ways you can go about it, for sure. Let's transition over to problems, right? So there can be problems with autoflowers. What would you say are the top 3 problems that growers face when growing autoflowers? And give us a solution to those problems.
What's the top number 1 problem everybody, especially beginners, will have with any plant? I need to give her more water. I need to give more water, So you have pockets of where all that water is at, and basically the plant will just think this is a real issue with autoflowers. The plant will just basically have no more air. We just talked in the beginning about it, how important for autoflowers it is to have very airy soil because they need a lot of air, and you basically suffocate the roots. She's gonna stress, she's gonna start flowering as a baby, and basically you're gonna have a tiny little plant, So there we definitely have our number 1 issue, but I guess it's more forgiving if you go for the periodic strains, but but yes, it's in that sense, it's, I guess, a bit more specific to autos. The next issue, probably nutrients, overfeeding, because once you overfeed, you can't let them bounce back, Like they most likely will just You can flush them, but then in the end of the day, they will just not get as big and everything, because they will eventually shift into flowering, especially if they're stressed. And that means, again, I messed it up in the sense that I will just have a smaller plant in the end. And I guess environmental issues. So I think a lot of times what people would like tell you why autoflowers are not as good as photoperiodic strains is because they often have like fluffy buds. You ever notice that?
Yeah.
So in my opinion, these fluffy buds come from a few little factors. So in the end of the day, an autoflower will need very, very much light and very intense light towards the end of the life cycle to really develop these nuggets we all like, right? And humidity issues. Like, you have to be so careful. And I don't even say powdery mildew or all these kind of issues or bud rot we get so easily if our humidities are too high during flowering. You have less of that problem with autoflowers because they are just more resistant. They're just tough bitches, if you want. So because these ladies where they come from much worse conditions, right? In like Siberia and stuff. But to get this density, if you have too much humidity in your air, these buds will not get very dense. They will just stay more fluffy. So even if you want to end up with nice, like harder rocks, you just have to try to keep the humidity down towards the last 2 weeks of flowering, especially. And I say, even, in the last 2 weeks, you don't have to have a plant which looks like the healthiest plant in the world anymore. Because we're not want to keep her alive for forever, We want her to put everything she got into these beautiful nuggets, because that's what we want in the end. And I think that's a big, big issue not too many people know about.
All right, there we go. Top 3. Good list right there. I like that. So if you were to meet a new grower in person and they're saying, "Hey, I'm brand new and I'm about to start growing autos," what advice would you have for them?
Don't overthink it. I mean, you mean brand new grower? Let's re-specify it. Like brand new grower, period, or brand new grower to autos? Like somebody who might have already
Brand new to autos.
Okay, so somebody who already grows other like photoperiodic strains.
Yeah.
Don't overthink it, and don't. You know what? Let her grow. Let her grow. Let her grow. Let her grow to find out what it's all about. Mess around here and there a little bit, but let her grow. Like, learn the life cycle of an autoflowering plant. Learn how to determine, And then all these tips we've said before. Airy soil for sure, If you want her to be big containers, And if you want her, and don't overfeed her, because she will not have the chance to bounce back like any other plant, Because the stress is the worst thing for an autoflower. Like, you stress them too much, they will just go into flower. That's just how simple it is, Like, you stress her too much. I mean, obviously you can stress her to death, but like that's would be dramatic. But if you just stress her enough, she'll just say, "Okay, I'm going to the flower."
Good advice. The future of autoflowers. Let's talk about that. So, do you foresee any innovations in the cultivation of autoflowers that could help growers potentially achieve even higher yields in the future?
I think it's more genetics. I mean, of course, there will be always innovations in cultivation, Like, I'm just like visited some facility of aquaponics, or just like it fascinates me absolutely, Then hey, yeah, now I can have my fish take care of my nutrition, and it's a whole cycle, especially in areas where you live, where you just don't have as much water technically available, you know what I mean? Like in the very dry areas, closed systems like that are fantastic. I think that there is already something called like super autos, like very few, they take a lot longer, but they still do the shift by themselves. So I actually just had an interview and I just talked with Sasha, the joint doctor, the person who really developed them like 30 years ago, and they went to the market over 20 years ago with the first autoflowers, with lowrider. And he says, we'll probably just scratch the surface. You know, we will figure out much more, you know, how to manipulate that and maybe have, you know, these varieties nowadays. I mean, they're so specific in terms of that they're targeting to in such a high percentage the home growers market. But there's so much more to that in the end of the day. Like, you can save so much plastic if you, instead of do light depth, you know, in all the Humboldt and Mendocino and so on, you know, where all a lot of fire's grown. If you have fire autos, you know, you don't have to do that anymore, you know. And I think we are coming to a point where autoflowers can compete with photoperiodic strains. And we have cups which are being won slowly but steady with autoflowers against photoperiodic strains. And once we come there, like, we need to get a little bit higher with the terp still. We have really, really terpy autos, so misunderstand me, but there is the most room for improvement, in my opinion, is in the terpenes. And like, when we think about the final product, that once we're there in a few years, I think that we have a good chance that people will take it more serious and that they will do much more scientific based breeding, and we will get autoflowers which can work for specific climates, which just, you know, where it's very hard to grow, you know, and so on and so on. So I think there's much room for improvement. We just started.
That's cool to hear. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what holds in the future for autos, for sure. Cool. Well, this was a great conversation. I think a lot of people are going to like this one. I know a lot of people are interested in growing autos, or they grow auto now or plan to grow autos in the future. So this is definitely some good information here. Can you tell listeners how they can find you and what you have upcoming in the future?
Well, I'm making all the videos for Fastbuds, so you can go to all the outlets, no matter if you want to watch them. I don't know. I think we have them even on Telegram. What I'm focused on is on YouTube, so you can go to Fastbuds Genetics, you know, as a channel. Now I just started with the legalization in Germany because I am German, and I'm just started another YouTube channel for anybody who wants to watch the content in German. You know, Fastbuds Germany. So that's where people can find most of my content I produce. So where I like explain more, where I will release this video about how to grow autos fast. You know, probably will come up with another video of how to maximize yields with, you know, just new stuff coming. I'm just coming back from Berlin. You'll see interviews. There's an interview with you in there too after we came back from BizCon. But if you want to hit me up personally, so if you want to have me personally writing back to you, then it's the best on Instagram, and that's called Sebastian Good 420. So you find me there, and I try to answer all DMs I'm getting, but I think sometimes it's getting too much. But I'll do my best.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely have a link to Sebastian's Instagram down in the YouTube description section below. I also put it as a pinned comment just so you can easily get to it. Give him a follow. And yeah, good conversation today. Appreciate you coming on, Sebastian. This was really good stuff. Thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. It's always fantastic to link up and to talk about the plant. I mean, I think if we wouldn't love doing this, we couldn't do this, no?
Right. And I'd love to hear from the audience. What advice do you have for growing autoflowers? Let us know down in the comment section below. And hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. That definitely helps. So appreciate you all, and catch you in the next episode. Peace out, everyone.